with this book, The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. All right, okay, so some of you have been following along. For some of you, you're just joining in, mid-salon. And so where we left off last week was there were three key points that came up in the excerpt that I read last week. And that was that excellence, a really good feeling life, can feel great, but sometimes we can stay stuck there and then we never make it through to our zone of genius and living a life of genius, which is where we really are in alignment with and as that creativity that we are at our core. It's also super important as we move through life, as we realize and fulfill our personal legend, our dreams, if you will. It's important to listen to, trust, and act upon intuition. And as we do, as we get more used to it, as we start to really pay attention more, then we become equal to experiencing more of that creativity, that love, that awesomeness that we are at our core. And that's when we start to move from the zone of excellence into the zone of genius. And so in the story, where we left off was the boy realizing that he could stay at the oasis, have a super amazing life, being the counselor at the oasis, make tons of money, be with his beloved Fatima, marry her, and have a wonderful, wonderful life. But was reminded by the alchemist that if he did that, he wouldn't be fulfilling or realizing his personal legend. So he had a choice to make. So he realizes that the thing he has to do is he has to follow the call on his heart, because this is what life is all about. And so the boy can't sleep. He's thinking about this. How is he going to tell Fatima? What is he going to tell her? So he makes his way over to her tent so that he can say goodbye. Fatima appeared at the entrance to the tent. The two walked out among the palms. The boy knew that it was a violation of the tradition, but that didn't matter to him now. "I'm going away," he said, "and I want you to know that I'm coming back. I love you because—" "Don't say anything," Fatima interrupted. "One is loved because one is loved. No reason is needed for loving." But the boy continued, "I had a dream, and I met with a king. I sold crystal and crossed the desert. And because the tribes declared war, I went to the well seeking the alchemist. So I love you because the entire universe conspired to help me find you." The two embraced. It was the first time either had touched the other. "I'll be back," the boy said. "Before this, I always looked to the desert with longing," said Fatima. "Now it will be with hope. My father went away one day, but he returned to my mother, and he has always come back since then." They said nothing else. They walked a bit farther among the palms, and then the boy left her at the entrance to her tent. And so probably the most poignant quote in this section, or at least this time for me, because as I've mentioned before, I've probably read this about 24 times by now. No exaggeration. And I get something new from it every time. But in this section, the one that jumps out at me is the one that we had in meditation, which is, one is loved because one is loved. No reason is needed for loving. So this reminds us that love is not something that is conditional. It is not something that depends on some kind of external validation or accomplishment or anything else. We are pure, essential love expressing. We are lovable just because we are. And the reason that we can love, and I'm sitting here looking at Ms. Sherry Love is Round Morgan, who is all about love, and I totally lost my train of thought now that I got distracted by you. But as we recognize that this is who and what we are, then we can more easily see it in everyone and everything else around us. And that's everyone and everything. It may not look or feel super loving all the time, but if there's only one thing going on, there's only one thing going on. And so every single feeling, every single thought, every single experience, every single aspect of life and living is love expressing in some way. We may have some kind of lens or worldview that may be a little bit clouded or something like that, so we're perceiving that love differently, but ultimately that love is expressing in its purest form all the time, no matter what. Ralph Waldo Emerson said in his essay, Love, "Love is our highest word and the synonym of God." And so when we love someone else, it is because we are expressing as the love we are. It is because we are recognizing what is familiar to us because it's who and what we are as well. And we are doing it because it is innate. We can't not do it. So there's no reason needed to love someone. We just get to love because that's who we are and that's who they are, and that is just how we show up and express in the world. So the title of my talk today is The Alchemy of Loving. So, continuing on in the story, the alchemist and the boy rode together for almost a week and mostly in silence. And when they camped, the alchemist's falcon would fly away and bring back food for them. They were constantly aware of all the tribal wars that were going on around them, so they had to be very, very careful and very mindful of where they went. And the boy was constantly paying attention to the omens of the desert. On the 7th day, the alchemist decided to make camp earlier than usual. The falcon flew off to find game, and the alchemist offered his water container to the boy. "You are almost at the end of your journey," said the alchemist. "I congratulate you for having pursued your personal legend." "And you've told me nothing along the way," said the boy. "I thought you were going to teach me some of the things you know. A while ago, I rode through the desert with a man who had books on alchemy, but I wasn't able to learn anything from them." "There is only one way to learn," the alchemist answered. "It's through action. Everything you need to know you have learned through your journey. You need to learn only one thing more." And so here, the thing that we're looking at, the thing that draws me in, is when the alchemist says, there is only one way to learn, and it's through action. And here we are reminded that we can read all the things, we can take all the classes, we can have all the conversations, we can listen to all the podcasts and lectures and talks and all that kind of stuff, but until we actually take action, until we actually do something, until we actually alchemize all of that theory and knowledge, it stays theory and knowledge. In order for us to actually experience it and put it into practice, we have to put it into practice. And so that's what he's telling the boy there. And this kind of reminded me today, as I was putting this together, it reminded me of when Glenn and I were getting ready for our daughter, Milana, to be born. It was actually her 22nd birthday yesterday, and I'm still like, what? When did that happen? But Glenn had already raised 2 kids. One was 20, one was going to be 18. And then Milana was coming along. So I'm like, he's a practiced parent. He knows what's going on. He knows how to do this, no problem. I was reading the books that I wanted to read, following the people I wanted to feel, or following the people I wanted to follow. And I had all of these ideas of how things were going to turn out and unfold, and thought, we're ready, we're prepared. And then Milana arrived and completely turned our world inside out and upside down. There was no preparation. And there were so many times I would ask my mom, when is this going to happen? How long does it take for this? And a lot of the times it was just, you'll know, it'll change at some point. But there wasn't anything she could say, even though she raised my sister and me and a bunch of her cousins. We had to go through it for ourselves. We had to experience that journey of parenthood, which was completely different than the journeys of parenthood that Glenn had with his 2 other kids. So theory will only get so far. You actually have to take action. And what went wrong when other alchemists tried to make gold and were unable to? This is the boy. "They were looking only for gold," his companion answered. "They were seeking the treasure of their personal legend without wanting actually to live out the personal legend." "What is it that I still need to know?" the boy asked. But the alchemist continued to look out to the horizon. And finally, the falcon returned with their meal. They dug a hole and lit their fire in it so that the light of the flames would not be seen. I'm an alchemist simply because I'm an alchemist, he said as he prepared the meal. I learned the science from my grandfather, who learned from his father, and so on, back to the creation of the world. In those times, the master work could be written simply on an emerald. But men began to reject simple things and to write tracts, interpretations, and philosophical studies. They also began to feel that they knew a better way than others had. Yet the emerald tablet is still alive today. What was written on the emerald tablet? The boy wanted to know. The alchemist began to draw in the sand and completed his drawing in less than 5 minutes. As he drew, the boy thought of the old king and the plaza where they had met that day. It seemed as if it had taken place years and years ago. This is what was written on the emerald tablet, said the alchemist when he had finished. The boy tried to read what was written in the sand. It's a code, said the boy, a bit disappointed. It looks like what I saw in the Englishman's books. No, the alchemist answered. It's like the flight of those two hawks. It can't be understood by reason alone. The emerald tablet is a direct passage to the soul of the world. The wise men understood that this natural world is only an image and a copy of paradise. The existence of this world is simply a guarantee that there exists a world that is perfect. God created the world so that through its visible objects, men could understand his spiritual teachings and the marvels of his wisdom. That's what I mean by action. Should I understand the emerald tablet? The boy asked. Perhaps if you were in a laboratory of alchemy, this would be the right time to study the best way to understand the emerald tablet. But you are in the desert, so immerse yourself in it. The desert will give you an understanding of the world. In fact, anything on the face of the earth will do that. You don't even have to understand the desert. All you have to do is contemplate a simple grain of sand, and you will see in it all the marvels of creation. How do I immerse myself in the desert? Listen to your heart. It knows all things because it came from the soul of the world, and it will one day return there. And so in this section, when the boy asks about how the other alchemists failed, and that he finds out that it was because they only paid attention to the gold and not the actual journey on how to get there, this is what he is reminded of again. It's just like the drops of oil story at the beginning, when there's that guy going through that incredible palace and all those gardens, but he's so focused on just the drops of oil, he misses out on everything, all the wonders, all the splendor, all those tapestries and everything around him. And then when he goes back so that he can pay attention to all that, he completely loses focus, has no direction, and completely loses the drops of oil. So the work is you have to focus, you have to know, you have to have your direction, and you have to know where you're going, but you need to pay attention and tune into everything that is unfolding along the way. That's the journey. That's realizing your personal legend. And so just before, when he was saying that there's only one way to learn and it's through action, there's only one way to experience life, and that's through living it, right? You can't just talk about it to someone. You can't live vicariously through someone else. You need to actually live your life, experience whatever it is that is yours to do. And then we're also reminded that life is simple, that we are the ones that tend to complicate it. By our schemes, our ideas, we know better, instead of just tuning in and allowing, instead of just surrendering and trusting and having faith, knowing that no matter what is going on, there is that in each and every one of us that is who and what we are, pure, essential love, that is bigger and more powerful, that has all the answers to every question that we could ever have, that they're already all there. And all that we need to do is listen. But so many times we get wrapped up in the stuff that's going on around us. We get wrapped up in all of the ideas and thoughts that are going on in our head instead of just allowing them to be, allowing them to dissipate, and then just tuning in to what is always steadfast and true and unwavering, no matter what. Life can't be understood by reason alone, the Alchemist says. We can learn everything that we need to learn about the truth of our being at any moment, in any way, any relationship, any experience. And so Leslie doesn't have to do it the same way as I do. Marg doesn't have to do it the same way as Jane does. Glenn doesn't have to do it the same way as Danny does. And the way that Danny does it right here in this minute is going to look different than it's going to look the next. Ours is to simply be open and allow ourselves to tune into and surrender to whatever guidance and wisdom is just always there and ready to unleash itself in, through, and as us every moment of every day. So in the end, we're reminded in this section that our value doesn't come from something external, an external source, that we are pure essential love no matter what. No matter how we feel about ourselves, no matter what opinions people have about us, no matter what someone else might tell us about us, who and what we are never, ever changes. And the more aware of that we become, then the easier it gets to navigate all of those things and all of those people and all of those circumstances trying to convince us otherwise. We're also reminded that the only way to learn is by taking action. There comes a point where we got to put the books down. We got to turn the podcasts off. We got to be like, okay, I've taken enough classes. Now I have to put that all into practice, right? And then the last thing is that our personal legend isn't simply about the goal. It's about the entire journey along the way. And that when we allow ourselves to pay attention, to notice, to tune in, and to appreciate every single step along that journey, that's the realizing part. The legend, the personal legend, it's already there. It's waiting for us. But all of this is what is ours to experience. So, the alchemy of loving. I invite you to just open up to whatever it is that is being stirred within you about your life right now, about your personal legend, about your dreams, things that you have that maybe you haven't been trying or putting as much energy into as you could because you're like, I'm not sure I'm ready. I don't know if I know how. Because believe me, there is that in you that knows. There is that is ready and available and accessible at any moment if you would just listen. And no matter what your journey is yours to take. It's going to look completely different than your friends, your kids, your communities. But when you allow yourself to tune into every single moment of that journey, you are realizing your personal legend, the one that is personal to you. Thank you, and so it is.